Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week number 2 of Biology 120. Let's see what we've got going on this week. We finished up week number 1 with our discussion board posts and the journal entry. So let's see what we have going on this week. So last week you learned about the scientific method. It's not quite as simple as that little outline that you've learned since maybe the 7th grade. But it is an organized way that we go about doing science and especially biology. And why do we do this? Because it helps us explain phenomena that are out there in the world. You learned about the characteristics of life. Your textbook lists 8, but there are all different ways to put these together and combinations and separate them, and yeah. So it really doesn't matter about the number. It just matters that you understand the different characteristics of life, like order and sensitivity to stimuli and adaptation and evolution and reproduction, all those. And what we say is that every organism has all of these characteristics of life. When we took a look at viruses, I hope that you realize that viruses do not check off the boxes for all of those characteristics of life. They just don't. They don't reproduce on their own. They don't have any metabolism, and that means they carry out chemistry. They do not at all. They have to use a host cell in order to do any kind of chemical reactions. They don't process energy. They don't make ATP. They don't use ATP. There's just a lot that viruses don't do, so they don't measure up to our definition of life. And that means that as microbiologists, we do not consider them living. All right, so this week you're going to learn about some chemistry. And you may be thinking, well, why in the world am I learning some chemistry? This is a biology class. Because we all have to be on the same page when we're talking about the molecules of life. So we're going to talk about some inorganic molecules and organic. And organic just means of organisms, right? Inorganic is not of organisms. So anyway, we'll get into this. Water. Water is a terribly important molecule of life. It is an inorganic molecule. It doesn't have any carbon in it, just H2O. So why is it so important? It's in every cell. Every single cell that ever has been, is, or will be has water in it. So why is the water there? The most important property of water is the fact that it can absorb a tremendous amount of heat before it changes into the next phase, which would be steam from liquid water. Well, why is that important? Because you got a lot of chemistry going on in cells, and that chemistry creates heat. Every single one of those chemical reactions creates heat, and that heat has to be absorbed. And water does that. It also has many other wonderful properties. It's a solvent, so things dissolve in it, some things. It adheres to other molecules. It coheres, it's cohesive. It binds to other water molecules. So it's a terribly important molecule. Then we have carbon. Carbon is an element. And you're going to be answering the question, why is carbon so important as the backbone of organic molecules? The most important reason is the fact that it can make 4 bonds with other atoms or molecules. And so carbon can form very big, very complex molecules, and that's what you need if you're going to build an organism. So that's the importance of carbon. We're going to take a look at the 4 groups of organic molecules. And these you have heard of because you talk about these all the time, having to do with your diet and nutrition. Carbohydrates. So this includes starches and sugars. Some of them are structural, some of them are used for energy, some are used for energy storage. Lipids. Lipids are hydrophobic, water-fearing. And so these include waxes, oils, fats. Many of the hormones in human beings and other animals are lipids. They're very important. They can be structural, like phospholipids are part of every cell membrane, but they can also store energy, and they have other important properties like the fact that they repel water. Proteins. There are so many proteins in cells. Most proteins are enzymes. Enzymes run the chemical reactions in cells. So, of course, proteins are tremendously important. And then we have nucleic acids, and the group of nucleic acids include DNA, RNA, but also that energy molecule ATP. So genetic information, that's the function of nucleic acids, and also energy molecules. So you're going to learn more about those this week. They're very important because we're going to keep talking about them for the rest of the term. Read the Module 2 overview, and it does give you functions in a nice little table of the organic molecules, so that will help you answer some questions that you need to answer. This is what's due this week. You have a couple of discussion board postings, well, 3. You have an initial posting that is due by Thursday, and this is the importance of macromolecules. That's those organic molecules that I just mentioned. Macro just means big, okay? Big molecules, that's the organic molecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So the importance of macromolecules and water in cells. Now, this is not in human beings. This is in cells, period. Because biology is the study of life. It's not the study of just human life. So what's the importance of these organic molecules and water in cells? And the other question that you need to answer is, if you look at this equation, food plus water plus some other factor equals life, what is that some other factor for you? So we call this factor X. What would you think this would be? Food and water, and what else is needed in order to make life? And you're going to explain your reasoning. Why did you pick this? Also remember, you're not just talking about human life. You're talking about all life. Plants, animals, fungi, protists, bacteria, everything. Okay, let's see what you can come up with. And in your 2 response posts to your classmates, which these are due by Sunday night, what's the necessity of nucleic acids in diet? And take a look at a food label. Do you see nucleic acids listed? You know, why have you heard of most of those other groups of organic molecules like carbohydrates, proteins, fats? Yeah, because they're on every food label you have ever seen in your life. What about nucleic acids? I will give you a hint about this. Look at the structure of a nucleotide. A nucleotide is the smallest subunit of a nucleic acid. Take a look at it. It's got a sugar in it, and it's got an amine or amino group, and that amino group sure looks a heck of a lot like proteins. Okay, so those are my clues for you. All right, and then you're going to have a journal entry, which basically is an essay, and you're answering questions. I think there are 5 questions. Don't forget the first one, the importance of carbon to life, okay? So don't miss all of your questions. So that you're going to talk about the properties of carbon and the link between fossil fuels and carbon dioxide. Watch the video that's included this week in the module introduction, because it explains this perfectly. You need to explain how you go from carbon to organisms to fossil fuels to the burning of fossil fuels to carbon dioxide that's released into the atmosphere. There's a connection between all of these. So you're going to explain that to me in your journal entry. All right, also you need to watch the Reliable Sources video and look at the Shapiro website, because that can give you lots of good information about sources. And the reason that you are going to need this is because you are going to do a final project in this class. And you'll do it in pieces, okay? So you're going to have 3 milestones that you do through the term. In fact, one will be due next week in week 3. You'll break up your final project into 3 parts, milestone 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, you put them all together in a slide presentation, which is called the final project. So the first thing that you have to do this week number 2 is to choose a topic. All right, we have some suggestions for you. If you look at the final project guidelines and rubric, you will find we have a bunch listed, and I have them on the slide here. And I'll just mention a few. We don't need to go through them all. But you pick something that's interesting to you. And I would suggest to you, if you've been in school already for a while, you have done these before. And so if your big thing in environmental science is water pollution, pick something else, pick something different. Go outside of the box, learn something that's interesting to you. That's the whole purpose of this final project, to learn some biology as you go along, do some research, and figure out maybe some solutions to some problems. And if you'll notice, these are problems or issues having to do with things in biology. So, for example, population ecology. If you work for the Department of Natural Resources, you will do population studies for the entire time that you work for them. You count how many deer are in a county or are in a state, and you analyze that data and figure out, well, how are we going to change the hunting regulations so that we maintain this deer population? Also, for example, whales. People do counts of whales so that we know how many there are out there in the world and how we can increase their population, because of course some of them are extremely endangered. So that's population ecology, where you study the organisms of a species that live together in a time and place. Energy crisis and alternative sources of energy. If you're interested in solar panels or something like that, that's a great topic. Human population is burgeoning here on the planet, and we're getting to the place where we're running out of space and resources, and we can see what happens when we have so many people on the planet just by evidence of the COVID outbreak and pandemic that we've had in the last couple of years. The last estimate that I saw was that 5 million people worldwide have died from COVID so far. And that's because so many people live so close together, it is easy to transmit a respiratory infection or disease because we live so close together. Deforestation is a problem in the world, but especially in Amazon right now. The current political situation in Brazil says that it is perfectly fine to cut down the Amazonian rainforest because we are making way for cattle and for growing crops. And yeah, that is super awesome, except that you're taking away the carbon sink that we have in the world. You're destroying who even knows how many species. Loss of biodiversity is just out the window. Really bad idea. There's no way to fix this once it's gone. You're just not going to be able to. So anyway, deforestation is an important problem. Endangered species, biodiversity, endangered species. I would pick one there. So endangered species, if you're interested in those, I think I mentioned on one of the slide last week or in my talk anyway, that the first time that I had ever seen a bald eagle in my life, and I'm old enough to have lived a long time, was in 2012. And I was standing on the beach by myself. I think it must have been a September. It was close to when the sun was going down. And I was looking for the dolphins that I love to take photographs of. And I looked over on the other island that is right across the inlet from where I was standing, and there was a bald eagle on the beach. Oh my goodness, I was so excited. I've never been so excited in my life. My heart was pounding. I was breathing really, really hard. I had my camera, of course. I got in the water. This is a dangerous spot. This is an inlet where the water rushes in or rushes out. I'm not kidding. I got in the water up to my knees so I could get as close as I could, and I was taking pictures of that bald eagle. I have never been so excited in my entire life. Why? Because I'd never seen one before, because it's an endangered species. But they are making a comeback, especially here in the South, and I'm so excited about it. Have seen them plenty times since then. We track them down as best we can. We've taken pictures of them, my sister and I, but absolutely love them. So endangered species. And there are lots of other topics. So if you don't see one here, all you need to do is ask me. I've got a couple of others here on my computer that I like to bring up. Light pollution. You ever thought about that? Have you ever flown in a plane at night? It is just astounding how much light there is in a city. Oh my goodness. How many car lots, Walmart parking lots, industrial areas have you seen just lit up? That is called light pollution. Yes, of course, you need light for protection and, to prevent crime and all that kind of thing. But couldn't we figure this out a little bit better? Like, should the lights come on when there's some movement? Great idea. Should light be pointing up into the sky? No, it shouldn't. It should all be directed down. Astronomers know this. If you're trying to look at the stars, you are not going to see very many if you look anywhere around a city, and that includes in the suburbs. You have to go way, 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 way out in the country in order to see stars very well. So light pollution is a problem. And also microplastics. Now, everybody knows that plastics are hard to dispose of. So that's under waste management, which is there on the list. But what about microplastics? When plastics break down, break down, break down, break down until they're teeny tiny little particles, even nanoparticles, what happens to them? Do they ever end up in plants and animals and algae and those little beads that they put in some makeup products to help exfoliate? Where do they end up? In the water, because you wash them down the drain, right? Are those harmful? They're ending up in organisms, and they will end up in human beings. So I'm just saying microplastics are a very big problem and will continue to be a problem until we regulate some of this, especially the disposal of plastics. So anyway, if you don't see a topic that you like, just email me and we'll figure out whether that's going to be a good one or not. I do suggest that you don't narrow down your topic too much. So let me think. And sometimes it works out okay. Like I had one student last semester who wanted to look at a particular endangered species of rattlesnake in her area, and that worked out perfectly fine because she could find enough information. She was really interested in reptiles, and she could find enough information on them and the problem and the ecosystem that they were found in. But try not to narrow down your topic too much, just so you have enough material to cover for your final project. If you're in question, all you have to do is let me know, please, and we will discuss it through email messages or a video conference or whatever you want to do, and we will figure it out. Okay? All right, I've got a tip for you this week to jot down a list of things to answer for each assignment. Post-it notes. Oh my goodness, I do it. I do it to make sure that you answer all the questions that you need to answer. I jot them down. And a post-it note does not take up much paper, and you can reuse them. I reuse it every term. So, but jot down and use junk paper. You get mail, write it on the back of an old envelope. So jot down a list of things to answer for each assignment, and that way you won't miss anything. Like I mentioned with that journal entry that you have this week, there are 5 questions, and one of them is set apart from the other 4, and a lot of students miss that first one. So if you jot down the topics for your journal assignment, you won't miss anything, and that means you won't miss any points. So I'm just saying that might help you. Okay, so I hope that you have a great week. Here's a shorebird right here, and he's so cute. And I forgot to mention a couple of slides back, that was an example of dolphin strand feeding, and that's one of the reasons that I go to the beach. Dolphins in my area of South Carolina, some of them have this learned behavior where they work together cooperatively and herd a school of fish and run them up onto the beach, catch them, because the dolphins come up out of the water and they're on the beach, always on their right sides. They grab the fish, and that's how they get their meal. It is an astonishing display. I mean, it is just amazing. And I'll probably put some more pictures. But that picture was from September, a trip that I had in September of dolphin strand feeding. So I hope that you have a wonderful week. And let me know if you need anything. Dr. Janie Sigmon, remember that, m.sigmon@snhu.edu. Have a great week.